Is this where? Oh, there's. Oh, yeah, hey, what is happening, wrestling fan? Wow, where's my voice, Kevin? What's happening,
You
wrestling
you
fans?
left the voice on Sunday when we are normally
Wow,
supposed to air.
my
But
voice is on Sunday. What is up?
uh, unfortunately, had some situations occurring on Sunday, so
Situations occur.
last minute. But that means we're ready to do a special Thursday night edition of the Two Bros Wrestling Show. So apologies for those who might have tuned in on Sunday. And I guess, Doug, maybe we should say apologies to anyone who normally would be watching TNA Impact at this time, since
Oh,
we're on opposite them at this point.
sorry, TNA Impact. Wait, oh yeah, they're TNA again, aren't they? They're Impact. They're not
And
Impact Wrestling anymore.
honestly, technically speaking, we're available in more homes than they are. So I think they should apologize to us.
Yeah, but we don't have Dolph Ziggler.
True that. Actually, great segue. Tonight, we have some free agent news that we'll talk about in our opening bell. But as we usually do to tee things up, our main event topic later on in the show is rating the Rumbles, looking at the best and worst from Royal Rumble history, including the history of the match itself, who we think are some of the better and worst winners. Doug, there's a reason we're doing this show on Thursday, and it's not just because we last minute pivot from Sunday, but we actually have had this topic ready for a year. We were originally supposed to do this show a year ago, and Vince McMahon had the audacity to return to his position with WWE, so we had to do a last minute change of plans on our topic. So darn it, we're going to get it in this year.
So you finally get to use all those notes you've been working on for a year now. But I was beginning to think maybe we had a Rumble curse. I mean, 2 years in a row we kind of bumped the show, but we're swinging back around. We're making good on this one. We're making it happen this year.
We are ready to rumble with a lot of the next 3 shows will be Rumble focused. But before we get into the first one, we do have some news. Ooh.
There it is.
First, thank you to all of you who tuned in last week to our special awards show edition of the Two Bros Wrestling Show. It was one of the more watched of our award episodes since we began doing those, and that was the 4th. But because of that, it has actually been a while since we've done any news in our regular format. There's a couple of things that happened during our hiatus I wanted to highlight. And Doug, I guess I would start with, let's start overseas. New Japan Pro Wrestling legend Hiroshi Tanahashi is the new president of the organization. Not kayfabe. The legend himself is actually the man where the buck stops that is running the whole organization. This happened right before Christmas.
The Young Bucks stop, though, right?
Not where the Young Bucks stop. Apparently, though, where Takami Obahari stops, who was the New Japan president since 2020.
By the way.
Thank you. If 2020 rings any bad bells, it obviously did for him too, because business was booming for New Japan. And then, of course, the pandemic and the shutdowns that happened in Japan and around the world, it really took a toll on New Japan's business. A lot of free agents left. And, I guess you can't really blame him for a pandemic killing business, but he apparently had heat with Okada, which, when your biggest and most profitable star and the president of the organization don't get along. And there was the very public spat he had with Ibushi too. So maybe star number 2 in the promotion.
And don't you think maybe somebody should look at their contracting scheme and stop getting all these big stars who contracts always seem to end at the same time and then everybody leaves? Stagger that just a little bit. Come on.
So Tanahashi, you listen to the man. Let's get those
contracts.
Let's get those contracts fixed. But hey, man, the icon at the head of a well-liked person at the head of the organization, all the best, and hopefully it helps New Japan, who have an American arm to their business, and we're really making inroads in this country as well prior to the pandemic. Hopefully they can regain that momentum under this new leadership.
Let's do it. Regain momentum.
And we had a job opening there. Next news story is someone who is departing and making the way for an unknown, but it is something that worth pointing out. I think we hinted about it as an aside comment in our last show, but Kevin Dunn is gone from WWE. This is a very big deal. Even though he's not an on-air character, last week WWE announced that Lee Fitting will serve as the new head of media and production for the company moving forward. And Fitting had previously worked at ESPN for more than 25 years before departing that organization in August. The position he is taking is really a catch-all position that at one point was just anything that Vince wanted, Vince's right-hand lieutenant, because that's what Kevin Dunn was for decades. And this was all effective January 1st. And it really goes, you know, I know these are corporate positions, so none of us as fans really know a whole lot about the individuals involved, but it's definitely a very, very much a sign that Vince McMahon is no longer the creative force in his company, since these changes are being allowed to occur without his approval and or consent.
Yeah, I think it is just another, I guess, beacon that there's such a changing of the guard in the WWE, and I hate that.
We'll see if there's any on-air, if there's any noticeable on-air changes as a result of this.
I mean, like a lack of crash zooms now, and a lot less, or a lot more stable cameras.
You've noticed that too, yeah, yeah. Thank you, Triple H.
Yes. Very
moving to AEW.
Oh, yes, AEW.
Yeah, Doug perked up with that. I know that I know you're going to like this next one because it's a story about Deonna Purrazzo, and obviously Deonna Purrazzo is now with AEW. Though apparently she had an offer from, well, maybe not an offer. That's a strong word. There was interest from WWE. We now know this as a recent report revealed that apparently she was told by WWE that they were interested, but that they were not doing anything with free agent signings until after the first of the year. Apparently, the virtuosa does not have patience and did not care to wait, because before the calendar turned to 2024 and that WWE offer may have come available to her, she signed with Tony Khan's promotion in what is now suddenly a pretty happening women's division when you got Serena Deeb coming back as well. And then Tony Storm doing the great work she's doing. Suddenly things are looking quite different on the women's side.
And now we have the virtuosa.
Oh, man, do we ever.
Yes,
and congratulations to her. We will have much more in the way of free agent news on Sunday's edition of the show. So tune back into us on Sunday to hear a lot more about what is a bonanza period right now for free agents, with lots of no competes expiring and a lot of folks changing different organizations. Again, let us know or tune in Sunday. We'll have some more of those for you. This one isn't an on-air talent, Doug, but we do have another job position being accepted to talk about, and that is the legendary Hall of Famer Mickie James has a new job. She has accepted the role of executive producer and head of female talent for Ohio Valley Wrestling.
The
long time indie has really seen an uptick in interest due to the wide exposure that it has received as part of the Netflix documentary series Wrestlers. In fact, another legend, Mick Foley, saw Wrestlers, called up his old buddy Al Snow to see if he could be part of OVW, and the hardcore legend has been making appearances for them in an on-screen role ever since.
Yes, he has.
Definitely. It's good stuff, man. If you've not watched Wrestlers, definitely watch Wrestlers.
Oh, go watch Wrestlers. It's great. But so what is happening to Holly Hood's mom now? Isn't she like the head of women's wrestling division for OVW? I'm so confused. How will this play out? I hope there's a second season of Wrestlers. I need to know.
I think Netflix, there is supposed to be. Get on it, because definitely it's worth seeing. More programming news, since we're talking about documentary series, Doug. That's a great segue. You teed me up to talk about Dark Side of the Ring. We had a long time that we had to wait before there was a season 4, and in fact, it was not even definite for a while that there would be a season 4. But we didn't have to wait nearly as long to find out that there will be a season 5, because the series will return in March. Apparently, it was originally, I guess, supposed to be 2 seasons airing last year, and obviously that didn't happen. So they already had quite a few, I guess, in production. So that's why the quick turnaround. The season 4 ended in 2023, and season 5 is going to pick up here in March. We don't really know anything yet about the subject matter for this season, other than it has been leaked that there will be a story on Gentleman Chris Adams. That's the only subject matter that we know of, and it doesn't take much of a Google search, fans, to know that Chris Adams story is going to be a heck of a 60 minutes. Definitely, we're fans here on the Two Bros Wrestling Show of Dark Side of the Ring. We had a whole show about it, so excited about season 5.
Excellent.
The last bit of news that we have tonight in our opening bell is also programming news, and that regards the National Wrestling Alliance. And after much speculation, rumors, and the like, the NWA has officially announced that it does have a relationship with the CW. There's many of us that had skepticism on that. It was reported the CW had lost interest in them because of a controversial angle on a recent NWA pay-per-view.
That really served nothing. Nothing did that angle serve.
It seemed like that was less of a big deal than the possible roadblock of SmackDown announcing that they were moving to the CW. That pretty much seemed like it'd be the end of Billy Corgan's, or William Patrick Corgan, as you rightly pointed out. That would be the end of it for the NWA, but apparently not. It's not quite as rosy as Billy made it sound. They are not on the linear version of the CW. They are not on the network. They are on the CW app beginning February 6th. So the app programming is free to watch. You don't have to have the CW. You don't have to subscribe to anything, but past seasons of NWA Power, as well as future content that is created. Not sure if that means NWA Power is going away from YouTube and they'll be exclusive to the CW app, because if it's free programming and you're not on the network and not getting those ad dollars, I imagine there has to be some sort of financial arrangement, some sort of remuneration, maybe ads within the app or something that makes this more worthwhile for Billy than having the more widespread YouTube exposure.
So surely they're getting compensated for exclusive content on the app to drive people to the app. If they're not necessarily staying with the NWA content, they've been driven to the app because of that. I mean, that has to be the logic there, right?
I would think that it would have to be. We will see come February 6th, so not very long. If that episode drops on the CW app and not on YouTube, we'll know that must in fact be the case.
All right. Interesting.
And with that, Doug, as I said, we have much more in the news, but we had such a big show planned. We want to save some news for this Sunday's show. Let's get straight to our main event.
Let's get straight to it. And to be clear, Big Show is not planned to be here tonight. There's a big show coming up. Not to say the Big Show is going to be on our show coming up either, but you guys know what we're talking about.
I mean, if we want to let folks think the Big Show's coming up, he will be on in the last 5 minutes of the show, so stick around to the end.
Can we do that?
I mean, I just did. We'll see. He could show up. We don't know.
Hard subject to change and all that good stuff, right?
The Big Show would be a one to talk about this topic we have tonight, because as a big man, it is pretty much made for big men. The idea of not just the Royal Rumble, but its antecedent, that being the Battle Royal itself. We're going to talk everything there is about the changes through the years to the Royal Rumble, but we can't talk Royal Rumble without talking about where and how it originated. And it came out of the old school Battle Royal, which, you know, Doug, I thought about this earlier. When you think about what a Battle Royal is, it on its face is totally ridiculous. I mean, if we're not talking, mano a mano, we're not even talking, 6-man tags. We're talking just 20, 30, whatever guys in the ring, just, it's not representative of any sort of competition or athletic competition that you would normally think of.
To me, you say battle royal, not Royal Rumble, because there is, I think, a very much a difference between the Royal
Yeah.
Rumble and a battle royal. But when I hear battle royal, I'm thinking, okay, this is a way for all the jobbers to get out there, the lower and mid carders to get out there to get some TV time, to do something to kill maybe 5-10 minutes or something. Somebody wins and there's nothing from it, but it's just they're in, they're out. A bunch of guys are on TV for a little while and then it's over.
So the first battle royal that I remember seeing myself was actually at the Logan Memorial Fieldhouse when probably early 80s when I was a kid, maybe one of the first wrestling shows, if not the first wrestling show I ever saw in person. And what it was it was the main event, but it was every wrestler I had already seen.
Right.
Coming out for the battle royal. And I think the winner got $1,000. And right, that's kind of how the original battle royals worked, that it was a good way to stretch out a card. Like you said, either use your jobbers if it was on TV, or you wanted to give some guys some paychecks, or if you didn't have enough guys, that was a good way to fill a good 20-30 minutes with all the guys that had already been on the show, just like they did in Logan. Made it feel, as a kid, I thought, this is great. Obviously, as you smarten up to the business, you realize, one, there is no real $1,000, and two, this can be kind of boring.
But that's a good point, though. To a kid, especially if you've seen all these like stars before, and then they come back out for this big thing at the end. And I'm sure it was a babyface that won the battle royal, right?
Oh,
it was like this big go home, feel good, go home moment for everybody. So I had not really even thought about it like that, but for house shows, that is probably a good thing to send folks home on.
And as a kid, I thought they were cool because, when you didn't pay attention to work rate or, high flying moves, or there's not a lot of room to move around in a battle royal when everyone's in the ring. But they were a way as a gimmick to get over big men who maybe weren't athletic, but like it was impressive to watch Andre the Giant, who was the king of the battle royal at a time when, especially when Andre was an attraction and you just showed up to see the giant man. You wanted to see him throw 15 guys out at one time or something like that.
Yeah, see, and the big guy spot is the spot I always hate in every battle royal or big girl. They've done it with Nia Jax too. Where it's the beast taking on 15. Everybody jumps on them and they're like, "Whoa!" I just bust out of it. Yeah, I hate that spot. Hate it.
And I had honestly had learned to hate battle royals, but I did find this one little bit before we moved to the Royal Rumble. Did you know that the battle royal is not a wrestling concept?
No,
I looked into the history of the battle royal. This no joke. The history of the battle royal can go back all the way to the Middle Ages, 300 or so years, and its roots are not in wrestling, but in boxing. They would often...
Wait a minute, like a whole bunch of dudes
would be... Yes.
Boxing at the same time.
It was basically a barroom brawl. It was you'd get 10, 15, 20 guys, get a cash prize. They would often be contested under the boxing rules at the time. So sometimes folks wearing gloves, sometimes in the bare knuckle days, not so much. But it was a brawl. It was a free for all, every man for himself, fight to the finish.
I
had no idea that it seems like, yes, it seems like an obvious like carny wrestling promoter idea. I was shocked to find it was a legitimate competition at one time with its roots in the world of boxing.
Very interesting. Humanity never ceases to amaze me.
Very much so. And but obviously, wrestling, as they did with boxing itself, they incorporated a lot of the elements into the kayfabe version of what we had in the battle royals of our youth, which started to fall out of fashion. So, Doug, it's probably not much of a surprise when Pat Patterson, the legendary Pat Patterson, first Intercontinental champ, he came up with the idea for Royal Rumble. And when he first presented it to Vince McMahon reportedly was not all that impressed with the concept.
Not into it. Did not like it.
I have to say that and I don't want to give a lot of too much credit to Vince McMahon for anything, but knowing what I know and how I feel, and I think that, you and I have talked before, how we generally feel about battle royals themselves, I guess it was kind of hard to visualize, but when you're just thinking a glorified battle royal, I probably wouldn't have been overly excited on the idea just on paper either.
Yeah, because I mean, if you tell me, hey, I've got this idea for a battle royal, I'm like, stop right there. We're done. Come back when you got something good.
Exactly. But I guess I guess Pat had a lot of leeway in WWF at the time, and so Vince gave him a shot at the idea.
So this came up in some of my research, which I thought was interesting. Is the NBC exec Dick Ebersol? Is that a person?
Ebersol.
That's a person, right?
Yeah.
Right. So apparently he needed some time to fill on. So Vince said, "All right, pitch it." Yeah, Ebersol loved it only because every couple of minutes somebody else comes out, and Ebersol, the TV mind at the time, said, "You know what? This is brilliant." Wasn't thinking about Vince. I'm pretty sure was thinking about it like we thought about it, that this is ridiculous. It's a battle royal. I don't care. Ebersol saw it from the outside looking in going, wait a minute. Every couple of minutes, somebody else comes in. That means I'm guaranteed to keep an audience watching and see who's comes next. I love this idea.
But don't you think that is the key?
Absolutely.
Because
yes,
think about how we as fans pop for an entrance. Sometimes we'll settle down during a match, but when there comes that guy or gal you really want to see, people are on their feet just by them walking out. So the idea that you have a 60 minutes worth of entrance that are surprises.
Yes, I mean,
and there's this key to the whole thing.
And there's this huge audience participation for the folks there in the arena, in the state, wherever they're having it, the folks at home watching. Exactly. And then everybody pops, especially when you get the surprise entrance, because that's another key to a good battle royal, is the surprise entrance, the Royal Rumble.
Which, obviously a battle royal does not have those advantages. Everyone's already out there to begin with. You have no entrances, and then you just start to see
ding 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 and go. And
it's boring. But I mean, Pat was really genius, and Dick Ebersol saw that genius in a way that Vince didn't, because that's good TV. I think that's what makes the difference.
Absolutely. And the storytelling that you can do with that, which, you put your baby face in and I don't know, say one and let him fight through everybody.
Now, the Royal Rumble has been a highlight of the wrestling calendar since it premiered in 1988. However, what the history books don't tend to tell you is that 1988 and Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Duggan was not actually the first winner of the first Royal Rumble. Doug, did you realize that there was another Royal Rumble prior to? So apparently, just to test the concept and to see how it worked, in St. Louis in the year before, in 1987, One Man Gang won a non-televised Royal Rumble where I guess Pat was trying to sell Vince on the whole concept still. Wanted to see how it would play and how the boys would react and how they would work with the concept before they put it on NBC. Because like you noted earlier, like this was not originally a pay-per-view. It was first time was, I think, a way to actually compete with Starrcade. I think that they were trying to undercut Starrcade. Starrcade was obviously a paid pay-per-view for the National Wrestling Alliance, and here is Vince offering this spectacle for free.
WWE doesn't counter program, Kevin. They don't need to do that kind of thing.
But yeah, the January 4th, 1988 Hamilton, Ontario Royal Rumble that we think of as the first was actually the second, but first in the history books. Let's talk a little bit about how the event changed, because that very first one, as well as the one with One Man Gang, had 20 men. Now we're used to 30. They've gone up to as much as 40. Do you think there's agreement, at least between you and I, is 30 the right number? Obviously 20 was, they tried to up it to 40 and that hasn't stuck. So is 30 the right amount?
I think 30 is good. I mean, 20 30 is good. 30 is good. You can, and that way you can work in you can work in your existing talent. You can get some story started because I've always thought of Rumble as the beginning of WrestleMania season. It kind of kicks things
Yeah.
off. If you don't have something going on yet, you're going to by the end of the Royal Rumble. It's going to happen. These are where feuds are made, and you need a good mix in there. Some jobbers have got to get in, and there's got to be at least 5 of these little small dudes, or what Vince would perceive as small dudes, having the giant bust out of them, and a handful of people get eliminated. Lesnar's got to come in and crush a whole bunch of people in our day and age. So I think 30 is right because there's got to be a good mix of talent in there to get things done.
And whether you did it intentionally or not, you actually presented another really big difference between the Royal Rumble that we think of today and the original Royal Rumbles, and that is that it kicks off the road to WrestleMania. That wasn't the case, nor the intention from the beginning. In fact, we noted that Vince wasn't necessarily high on the concept of Royal Rumble. For the first few Royal Rumbles, the Royal Rumble match itself wasn't even the main event of the pay-per-view in which it was named after. And, part of that, I think that was missing, and probably the best change they ever made, was stakes, right? So it's that battle royal thing of like, hey, here's a kayfabe $1,000 check or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Like someone, I mean, and I don't mean to diminish anyone who won the Andre the Giant Battle Royal, but there's a reason when they have that Battle Royal at WrestleMania, when they used to, it's the reason that they have it on the pre-show and just give a guy a trophy, because seconds after it's over, no one cares.
No one cares.
And what does it mean? What Hacksaw get other than now, being thought of as the first winner? Big John Studd, I think, was the second, then Hulk Hogan. But I mean, after the applause died down in the arena, by the next broadcast, it was over with. There was nothing that, lasted from Royal Rumble. But you said it. It's now considered the start of an entire season worth of storytelling that you can plant into that match. And they didn't necessarily, on its surface, you look at the first couple of Rumbles and, surface-wise, it looks similar to the Rumbles we see today. But the key element that was definitely missing is it didn't mean anything for the victor.
Right. Yeah, it definitely has evolved into something very, very special from, day one to where it is to now. But I have a hard time associating it with anything other than, the gateway to WrestleMania season at this point. I think any modern wrestling fan is the same way. It does, and it has a hard time even thinking of a time when the Royal Rumble was anything but. Where you got to stand and point at the sign,
Well, that's why you don't think of Big John Studd as the winner, or
absolutely,
anything along those lines, because he wasn't minted as a star, or it wasn't one of those. And now he goes on this hero's journey to WrestleMania. And what really changed all of that, it wasn't necessarily intended. Again, sometimes the best things are accidents, but it wasn't a WrestleMania season kickoff that started it. But in 1992. The Nature Boy Ric Flair, exactly. The world title in WWE at the time was vacant. And so as a storyline way of filling that vacant title, the one and only time that the winner of the Royal Rumble actually became a world champion was in 1992. And it was a way of putting Ric Flair in a situation where, traditionally seen as a National Wrestling Alliance guy, he'd not been on WWE's radar for that long for those fans who weren't familiar with the Nature Boy's other work. And in one night, they minted a new world champion, solidified Ric Flair as a, promotion, hero, regardless of what company he was in. And because it had such high stakes and went over so well, after that, they got the idea of like, wow, if you actually had something meaningful at stake, perhaps this is more than just a one-night event. And from that 1992, out of necessity, really, of with a tear in my eye, Ric Flair walking away with the world title that night, that started the tradition of let's make it about something. And, right after that, they began having the victor of the Royal Rumble go on to headline WrestleMania.
Yeah, I mean, there's just such great storytelling possibilities with the Rumble. It amazes me that it kind of evolved the way it did, because in hindsight, looking back, it's like this thing is a gold mine. You
Yeah.
place it in front of a few months in front of WrestleMania, and look what we can do with it. But I guess that's hindsight.
When you do realize that it can then have both a victor and or storylines developed in the match could then play out over the matter of months. Suddenly you went from having something that meant something on one night mean something for possible 3-4 months of storytelling.
Absolutely.
Now, Doug, another change through the years, and I guess it's worth noting that, yes, once they added the stakes, it definitely made for a more interesting event. But because of that, there is, to every upside a downside, right? So after a few hot Royal Rumbles there in the 90s with this new sort of concept, it began to get a little predictable because you knew that like Midian isn't going to headline WrestleMania, right? So there was most years there was this lag period where you started to pretty much guarantee like, okay, there's 3 or 4 legitimate WrestleMania opponents for the champ. And because there's a big time gap between January and March and or April, sometimes it took the element of surprise out of some of those Rumbles because it was a foregone conclusion who was going to win. I think that probably changed thanks to the brand split. Because of the brand split, you then had the opportunity to challenge for which title you choose, therefore exponentially increasing your number of winners and the obvious WrestleMania headlining match that we're all waiting on. For example, it doesn't mean The Rock's going to enter and win the Royal Rumble. Somebody could be challenging Seth Rollins too. So it does definitely add more intrigue, I think, and makes it less predictable with the brand split. Don't you think? I know you're kind of iffy on the brand split, but I think that for a Royal Rumble, it actually was a bonus.
Yeah. I'll agree with you because, and now with the inclusion of NXT in that, so you win, we've seen it, you don't have to go for that, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, you go for, I don't even know who the NXT champion is, but because it's just not my black and gold. It's what I've seen is really good, but this is another show.
We'll do a whole show on convincing Doug of NXT's resurgence.
But, you've got so much potential there. And, I'm sure we're going to see some NXT folks showing up on the Rumble too, because that's exciting. Could this young upstart be the one who, flips Cody Rhodes over the ropes and, makes sure that he does not.
Now he's just fantasy. Now Doug's just fantasy booking.
I don't know what you're talking about, dude. Cody was just having to be the first person that came to mind.
Just happened to be. I think of all the differences, other than adding the stakes, I really do think that was the biggest and best improvement of Royal Rumble. But a close second to me, and that is the addition of a women's Royal Rumble.
Yes.
I think the addition of a women's Royal Rumble not only brings equity between the sexes in WWE and brings women up on par with the men, it also adds that extra layer of unpredictability and excitement to the event that you now have 2 Rumble matches and 4 possible championship scenarios, or as you say, 6 if you include the NXT championships.
Right.
It's not just one match where there's 2 or 3 people you think is going to win. Now you have 2 matches and multiple directions it can go. With not just mentioning that it's the fair and right thing to do to add a women's Royal Rumble. I think that has by far been one of the best enhancements to the Rumble over the years.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, you get that excitement and you get a lot of talent who may not otherwise get, a chance to be, in the spotlight like that. It's just such a great tool. Again, I hate to keep hammering it, but it is such a great storytelling tool. And now you can do it across 3 brands.
And it's telling, I think, as to the importance of the Rumble match itself, that at one time, Vince was so unsold on the idea that it wasn't even headlining the Royal Rumble pay-per-view event. And now, thanks to the addition of the Women's Royal Rumble and both matches going about it, 2/3 of the entire Royal Rumble card are going to be Royal Rumble matches. It ends up being the other matches that are the inconsequential matches now.
So true.
It's all about the Rumble match.
Yeah, absolutely.
Since we're talking about the addition of Royal Rumbles, I guess we have to talk about one change that fortunately did not take, and that was the one and only extra Royal Rumble that they tried to pull off in Saudi Arabia. So let's, I guess, just pretend that that didn't happen.
I don't really watch the Saudi shows because, reasons, but I didn't realize that it wasn't an ongoing thing.
He did that once.
That once where Titus like ran down and slid under.
That's true. He did give us one of the best Royal Rumble moments. That is hilarious.
That's what I've seen the YouTube clips of that, and I'm like, okay, that's fun, I guess.
It is, you said it earlier, it is now the start of the WrestleMania calendar. And when you try to throw an extra one in, it takes the specialness away. It's a one-time-a-year event that kicks off the wrestling season in January, kicks off WrestleMania season. Trying to throw another one in there was a very poor idea.
Yeah, but they needed to get paid for it, so... let's give them something special. I mean, they are paying for it. Might as well give them something special in Saudi, I guess.
Yeah. Wasn't all that special other than Titus making us laugh unintentionally.
Come on. And I got to say, the dude's such a good sport about it, by the way.
Oh, yeah. That's what he's most known for, and he owns it.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about some of the star-making or game-changing victors we've had through the years in Royal Rumble. I mentioned one earlier, so I'll start with him. I think that Flair's win in '92 was the first really significant win, as it both made the event it made the event more prominent as the fact that it crowned a world champion. It was the first one with real stakes. It made the Royal Rumble a bigger deal. And, it's strange to say, it made Ric Flair a bigger deal because by that time he was widely considered the greatest wrestler in the world. But there was a big divide in the NWA fan base and the WWF fan base. So for the largest and most pop culture centered fan base of that era, it was maybe the first time they'd paid that much attention to Ric Flair, and it made him universally known.
Yeah, because again, it's such a great storytelling potential that exists within this thing. You take this, definitely not an unknown, but maybe unknown to a portion of your audience, which, like you said, it's the pop culture driven brand. This is more your Pepsi than your Coke or whatever, however you want to say it. But, these people by the end of it were like, wow, this dude's legit. Telling maybe the uninformed folks, what us smarks have known forever about Flair. And
it was the first time that particular Royal Rumble that, prior to that, it wasn't necessarily something you'd add to your resume. But now Rumble victors are often credited as such, even when being discussed outside of Mania season, where, it's like someone being referred to as a former champion or a former Money in the Bank winner. A former Royal Rumble winner is now something that is added onto your resume. And before that, it wasn't.
This is so true. You get it on your little marquee down at the bottom now. Yeah.
I think that the mid '90s and HBK and when he won,
absolutely.
That first one that he was upper mid card maybe at the time. He was seen as a ex tag wrestler still, and I think by winning the Rumble that legitimized him.
Absolutely, and really Rumble starting at 1. Working through. Yeah.
Stone Cold, I know that he's the only 3-time winner, but it might seem, again, in hindsight, like people are like, wait a minute, Stone Cold regardless. No, but starting with that first one, he wasn't quite the Stone Cold of legend that we know now. I think a big part of his dominant run there in the '90s was really solidified his toughness by being the one and only guy that could do this 3 times.
And you have guys who really don't need that huge rub, like Lesnar when he came in, just a few years ago, and just destroyed like everybody, just person after person after person after person. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was great, but it was so ridiculous. And he didn't need that push. He didn't need that rub, but it just looked cool. It was a great storytelling thing for Lesnar.
It's worth pointing out that you can win at the Royal Rumble without being the actual winner of the Royal Rumble. You have a good Rumble performance and you are elevated in the mind of not just your peers and on the card, but fans see you differently. Oftentimes you'll remember things like the Kofi spots more than you remember who actually won. And Kofi's never been anywhere near the ending victory,
so
but
true.
He's synonymous with the Rumble.
So true, because you have these awesome Kofi spots to the point where I think at this point you're like, is he going to pull something crazy off, or is he going to goof it? You know, is he? Can he still do it? Yeah, exactly. What's his crazy spot this time?
I think as far as solidifying the fans' minds, you have to also, when pointing out star-making victories, I know Asuka was a star in Japan. Yes. I know Asuka was a star in NXT, but Asuka was not really established on the main WWE brand. She wasn't the same Asuka. And, you know, you can make the argument that it's been back and forth as if she is that Asuka since. But there is no doubt when you think of the very first Women's Royal Rumble, you will always know that Asuka was the first victor. And I believe that that is a very significant thing to put on someone's resume, and definitely solidified her as a main eventer. And a big deal.
Absolutely. That was on my list, Asuka's, you know, win. Yeah.
It's like, how about Drew?
You know what? Drew's not on my list. Shame on me, but yeah.
I mean, you talk about somebody that was mid card,
yeah,
and a surprise. Really, he wouldn't have been one of that year. Would not have been one of the last 3 or 4 guys we would even expected to be in the ring, much less be a winner.
So true.
And he's been around the main event, if not in the main event, ever since. So it can take you next level.
Yes, absolutely, it can. Again, I keep hammering it, but such a great storytelling tool. Such a great storytelling tool. Can make people, I mean, it does what wrestling does when it's working well, when wins and losses, sorry, Tony Khan, don't really matter. We'd like to think they do, but they really don't. It's about the story. You know, and Royal Rumble is such a great tool for that.
When it's done well, right?
When it's done well. There are times.
Talk about some of the dud victors, like some of the bad victors.
I think
through the years.
You know, for me, I think the worst booking of a Royal Rumble winner has to be when Vince won the Royal Rumble.
Vince McMahon, 1999. He was 53 years old at the time. And obviously a victory of the 53-year-old non-wrestling owner for the purposes of continuing a storyline kind of wasted the whole concept of Royal Rumble that year. I agree with you. That was on my list as one of the worst ever.
I mean, again, it's a great storytelling tool. That's not the story you need to tell with a Royal Rumble. You need to put it didn't. I can't even talk about it.
It was bad.
You know, I got a couple on my list here too. Like, what it makes me feel so bad, though, you know, we're talking about Royal Rumble wins that were just terribly received by the fans, is when Reigns wins. Even The Rock can't get him over afterwards. You know,
that's a point. Before I guess I move on from just bad winners, you can have a good Royal Rumble match with a bad winner, or you can have a bad Royal Rumble match with the right winner. That was one of those situations where maybe it's the right guy in the wrong time.
Right. Sure.
It wasn't necessarily on paper. You go back and watch it and go, that's not that bad of a Royal Rumble. But at the time, what was going on and how they had him positioned made him the wrong winner. I would argue that Alberto Del Rio was the wrong winner at any given time.
God, yes. Yes.
Alberto Del Rio was a Royal Rumble winner in 2011, and that was the one year that they tried to expand it to 40 men as well. So not only was it a wrong winner, it was a wrong concept and just a bad overall Royal Rumble.
So I think, you know, right there is clearly, you know, you get star quality like Del Rio and the excellent human being he is, you know, as a winner when you have at least 40 men in there. So that's definitely too many. Well, that proves that.
And you'd think with that many that there would be at least 39 other guys that were more worthy of that than Alberto Del Rio.
Really? I mean, come on, man. I forgot about Del Rio. I probably should have ran a list of like all the Rumble winners, just look through them, because I was just hitting high spots here. Because, you know, I think another one that made my list, we're talking about like, you know, wrong place, wrong time. You know, let's bring Batista back. Let's bring the movie star guy back. Let's put him over. Oh, wait a minute. We had a homegrown talent here that everybody loved. That was probably the wrong thing to do, but we did it anyway.
I mean, that honestly is the 2 straight years that they decided WWE
back. Yeah.
WWE doubled down on like, okay, you want Daniel Bryan? No, we're going to give you the returning movie star. And then the next year, it's like, no, we're going to do it again.
No,
you still want Daniel Bryan? You don't know what you want. Yeah. There are moments, obviously, outside of just winners and losers, Doug. I think you hit on, talk about all the storyline possibilities, but some of the things that make the Royal Rumble not only different than a Battle Royal, but special on the calendar. I think that the surprise moments, right?
Yes.
So
absolutely. And how
back in the day of WCW and ECW, those surprises could be someone jumping to the other team. Do you think it's possible now that we're, starting to see some discontent from AEW talent and we've seen more people going back the other way? Do you think we can start seeing that surprise element come in again to Royal Rumble? Maybe not this year, but do you think in future years?
I say we get it at least once with at least one person this year from AEW.
Oh, calling out. I'm gonna make you tell who you think that person might be on Sunday.
I was going to say maybe we should save that for Sunday's show because I've got ideas. We are seeing at least one, even though there's another person that's actually favored to win an AEW talent. Is actually he's not talent right now according to their website anyway. He's one of the favorites to win, but that's not who I'm talking about.
So post WCW and ECW, the surprise returns have typically been people coming back from injury or legends that are coming back.
Yep.
Or the occasional celebrity, Doug. And I guess we have to mention that is also part of, I don't know what you think. Let's talk legends first. Every now and then, your Iron Sheik coming out, knowing he's not going to win. It's just a nice, cool surprise to see some of these older wrestlers come back.
It's a good nostalgia pop.
I don't know. The celebrities, I'm a little more hit or miss on. I mean, Bad Bunny, a couple years ago, okay. Drew Carey.
Did you just say Bad Bunny and Drew Carey?
Yeah, I mean, they're both Royal Rumble participants. That is definitely something they both can brag about. One different than the other.
What's the baseball guy that shows up
Pete
all the
Rose.
time? Yes, like Kane will always choke slam him out of the Royal Rumble.
So that's another great example, right? Okay, Bad Bunny had an established reputation with WWE. I will allow it. The Pete Rose thing became an ongoing gimmick that, you could say it played its course. You might not. I don't know. I thought it was kind of funny. There was no way that he was going to win, and it was just kind of the comedy bit because comedy is a part of the overall Royal Rumble too. But then you have your celebrities that have zero reason to be there, like a Drew Carey, and it's not funny and it doesn't serve a purpose, and it just is a waste of a space of a wrestler you might want to see.
I'd like to think that Project Synergy has gotten a lot better, with, here we have this product to promote. We have this brand over here. Let's put these things together and try and have some synergy with a production and a product. But I don't know, because it seems like we've had some very awkward. I can't think of any recently other than that whole zombie thing with the Miz and that whole terrible thing. But Royal Rumble wise, I don't think anybody awkwardly has shown up to promote something. Oh, there's the thumbs up. There they are. They just show up randomly. But if we can continue to get the caliber of celebrities as our Bad Bunnies, as our Logan Pauls, as our Pat McAfees, I'm okay with more celebrities because I've been, shut up many, many a time recently when I started talking trash about, celebrity participants in matches. Those three in particular have just shut me down completely. If we see more talent like that, I am all for more celebrities.
I was going to say if Bad Bunny or Pat McAfee make an appearance this year, I don't think I'd argue on either of those two either.
Absolutely.
How about we talked about a bit earlier, the Kofi moments. You say we wait on him. Considering his age and the fact that it's been a while since he had a really memorable one or one that has went well, there's been recent years that they've not even had him try to do it. Is it okay to retire that as let's not keep trying to outdo ourselves and maybe hurt an aging Kofi? Or do you think that there's one or two more Kofi surprise re-entries still left?
I think I'm not sure what Big E's status is right now health wise, but I'm thinking there has to be at least one more New Day spot with the OG, all three New Day out there, even if Big E's just at ringside to happen to catch Kofi or something, if he is able to do such things now. I'm thinking I've read some stuff about him being like, having some backstage activity. I don't know if he's up for wrestling or cleared for wrestling or what
Gosh, I love that.
But I think we should at least get a Biggie out there, cheering Kofi on to a wacky spot. Maybe we get that this year before it is too late to retire that. Cause like you say, Kofi's still a young man, but not so much in wrestling years. So
how about the you talked about the Lesnar thing earlier. I call those the Kane moments because for years that was always Kane's like so the big guy. But that does go back to the history of battle royals and your Andres that we talked about earlier, or your Big John Studs, or it is those big guy spots. And you said you're not a fan, so
I'm not
the big guy coming through and eliminating a bunch of people. Are you cool with that? If that
okay,
happens?
so yeah, that is a double standard. But yeah, big guy spot like the big giant lumbering like slow dude is like, but Lesnar comes in there with that explosive like athletic energy and just destroys people. I'm all for that, man. I guess you have to be an explosive athlete and be a big dude. If you're the slow lumbering giant, I don't care. It's just silly then.
So we're talking here like the moments outside of just the victors that tend to matter in Royal Rumble. To me, one of the more memorable Royal Rumble moments that was memorable for all the wrong reasons, and that is Royal Rumble 2005, right? So Batista and Cena are your two final participants. When they both go over the top rope and their feet hit at the same time. Now, we've seen this kind of ending before. I'm not that big on the whole, like, hey, which guy's feet touch first? Let's go to the tape. The thing, though, about this one is we didn't know it at the time, but that was not the intended or planned outcome. Batista lost his balance when the Batista bombing Cena and causing him to tumble out and actually hitting the floor slightly first, though that was conveniently ignored. This led to an improvised ending where a panicked Vince McMahon runs down to the ring to restart the match and somehow managed to slide in the ring and tear not one, but both of his quads while doing so. So that ending was a total mess. It was actually a pretty decent Rumble until everything completely went wrong, which is another I guess thing to point out, like we were saying earlier, sometimes good Rumble, bad ending, good Rumble, bad winner, or bad Rumble, right winner. Like there are so many factors at play to add up to what we would all call that was a great Rumble or a classic Rumble. And it usually has to tick all the boxes, action all the way throughout, the right winner. But you got that many men in the ring and 60 minutes going on. You got somebody you're trying to run the table with. What happens if you're, Shawn Michaels or Chris Benoit the year? Like, what if they got hurt like in the beginning, like legit, or accidentally got thrown out, and that was the plan all along? There's a lot that can go wrong.
There absolutely is. I mean, it's got to be chaos in there, and it's organized. We know there are spots that are set, but a lot of guys, especially when the ring gets really full, it looks like dudes are just wandering around looking for something to do. Well, I'm going to go over here and punch you. And, oh, hey, I'm going to wander over. I mean, at points, it looks like there's just a bunch of drunks staggering around in the ring.
That's another thing. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned it because I didn't have it on my list. But when you talk about what makes a successful or a failed Royal Rumble, when you have 60 minutes to fill, pacing is extremely important. You don't want the ring to get overly crowded, but you don't want it to be, the wrong mix of people in the ring that fans get bored. You have to constantly keep those moments happening, get a bunch of folks in, realize, okay, now it's time to, thin things out, thin the herd out a little bit in order to make, you almost have to have acts to this,
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
story. And if you
Absolutely.
don't hit all of those beats, fans may at the end go, and shrug. Because let's be honest, there's been some great Royal Rumbles. There's also been some dud Royal Rumbles. For the most part, a majority of them probably fall somewhere in between.
Yeah,
neither
fair.
good nor bad, just a mix. But let's now go and talk the best and worst of all time. Some of the best or worst that bell to bell are just remembered for all the wrong kind of reasons. So I'll be honest, the first one wasn't great. The WWE and the wrestlers didn't have the concept down. There wasn't any stakes. Hacksaw wasn't the most interesting winner in the world. The match itself was just kind of boring because they didn't have all the things we associate now, like the celebrities or the returns or, all those kind of things that make it kind of exciting. But you mentioned them both earlier, and I'm going to say that 2014 and 2015 were back-to-back years where WWE just made the same mistake twice. 14, the fans wanted Daniel Bryan to win so badly that they crapped all over the eventual winner, returning Batista, who clearly was not happy with the reaction if you go back and watch. But then rather than learn from their mistakes, WWE doubled down in 2015.
Double down.
They thought, fans again thought Daniel Bryan should be the Rumble winner, and instead Vince put over Rumble Reigns, which might be
Rumble. Did you say Rumble Reigns?
Rumble Reigns.
Rumble Reigns.
They should have gone with that. He'd have got over.
Absolutely.
Now, they were trying to position him as a face, so it might be weird to think now, like, how could Roman Reigns ever be the wrong winner? But he was, in the way they were trying to push him as a babyface. Just solidified fans' perception he was the company guy that was being force-fed, and they were right. They were trying to force-feed him. I would give, though, saying those two were close, I would give the nod to 2014 as the worst because Bryan didn't even enter the Rumble that year. So that caused fans to not just boo Batista, that caused poor Rey Mysterio, who had the unenviable task of being entrant number 30.
Well, that's just it, man. Because I was thinking about that too. Because how disappointing, especially as fans who think we know what's happening, who think we have an inside. It's like, oh, this guy's going to show up. That guy's going to show up. This is going to happen. They're going to bring Bryan in at 30. He's going to come in. He's going to win the whole thing. It's going to be awesome. And then Rey Mysterio comes up. Somebody else comes up at that 30 spot when you were straight up expecting so-and-so to show up, and this was going to be it. You were ready to just pop, and then you're so let down.
And that's Vince's stubbornness, because if he really wanted to make that number 30 guy, make him Triple H or somebody, like making somebody that the fans were going to boo anyway. Not poor Rey Mysterio. Right. When it's not Daniel Bryan, whoever it is going to be booed. At least make it a bad guy.
Yeah. Send a
I
heel
have to
out.
say that really close to that though, as far as worst Rumbles, and it was one that was recent that I would have to say that has. Oh, you know which one I'm going for.
Does it have another McMahon booking most of it?
What's wrong with these McMahons thinking that they are Royal Rumble gods, Doug?
Didn't Shane also get hurt at this one? Oh, no, that wasn't the Royal Rumble. Never mind.
2022. It was the year Shane booked himself, booked the Rumble and then booked himself as an entrant to look really, really ridiculously strong with tons of eliminations and the like. It went over as well backstage as it did to fans watching on screen. It's actually not just the total dud of a Rumble. It's what would get Shane fired by his own father.
You got to go. You can't do that. That was terrible.
Are any of those your worst Rumbles, or do you have a worst? I would say maybe 2022 and 2014.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a toss-up between 14 and 15, but but 15, the just ending. I mean, you can't even get Reigns over with The Rock. At 15, the fans are just so disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, you got to put that one in the conversation when The Rock doesn't even get you cheered.
I mean, Batista, easily pivot to that, Hollywood heel, not a problem. But, they were doing something completely different with Reigns, and it just did not work. And you legit feel bad for the dude. I mean, clearly he had what Vince saw all along, but he had to get there on his own, not being force fed down the fans' faces, like he was. But that wasn't the time for it either. Let it develop, let it be organic.
That's
See,
right.
thumbs up, the random thumbs up from the wacky camera settings old man don't know how to fix, but
it's all right. Mistakes happen in Royal Rumbles. You just work around them.
Right.
Let's bring this main event topic home on a positive note. Let's talk some of the best Royal Rumbles of all time. And I will preface the discussion here by saying it's not apples to apples because there just have not been enough women's Royal Rumbles compared to the number of men's Royal Rumbles. We'd be remiss not to talk about how important the women's Rumbles have been. I think since its inception, that first one, bringing back a lot of the divas that helped to bridge the gap from divas to female superstars that we have. That was really cool acknowledgement, and I think that was a special moment. But it's almost its own category, the women's and men's Royal Rumbles, because there's not been nearly as much history to compare to. For me, the greatest men's Royal Rumble ever, toss up the Flair victory we mentioned earlier, because the stakes were never higher than you walk away with world champion, and Flair being the NWA guy, which we talked before. But for me, I think the best bell to bell as far as the greatest Royal Rumble match ever, it's a recent one. Right down to the surprise winner, Drew McIntyre's main event ascension, took him from the undercard to the main event. That was the Rumble where Brock Lesnar decided that even as champ, he was going to enter himself in the Rumble, and he was going to enter himself first. As you talked about earlier, it led to almost 30 minutes worth of eliminations, just 13 guys. He just tore through folks. And I know if you didn't see that match, that sounds like it could be repetitive, but the way they did it with a beast like him was so well paced, again, pacing, right, that it made it absolutely made the moment when he did get eliminated by Drew, the roof came off the place. So all of that played a role. And funny aside, a note that I read when looking at this one, nearly 30 minutes that he spent in the Royal Rumble that year actually was almost equal to the time that Brock Lesnar had been in the ring combined for his last 8 pay-per-view matches prior to that.
I believe
those 8 pay-per-view matches were like 33 minutes worth of in-ring action, and he got like 28 out of that Royal Rumble.
I believe that, man. I do believe that.
You think about the moment when Keith Lee matched up against him, but there were so many moments from that Royal Rumble that stood out, and then the big victory at the end. By the guy who you didn't even think would be in the final. I love that Royal Rumble.
Great storytelling tools. For me, I think it's the HBK one, that HBK victory back in, what was it, 95? See, thumbs up again. There we go. 95, was it 96? No, 95 is what it was. The HBK victory. I mean, that's, again, great storytelling. You put them in early, you let them run it through. You've made a star by the end.
Who will be the stars this year? That's what we'll be talking about on Sunday. We got a lot of potential storylines, a lot of rumors on who's going to be in these WrestleMania main events. Again, it's all about the stakes. It's all about the stories. It's all about the moments. It's not just winners and losers. It's returns. It's celebrities. It's comedy. It's everything when done well. Or you get a McMahon too involved in the booking, and they can go the complete opposite direction.
I don't think we'll see that this year. Call me crazy.
Not
unless Declan shows up, and runs the Rumble.
So how definitely will Triple H handle under the new regime the first steps on the road to WrestleMania? That's what we're going to be talking about on Sunday. But before we do that, we got to finish strong here.
Big finish. I got to go from iPad to actual paper and pencil now, or paper and pen.
Paper and pen again, because we were not able to have our show on Sunday. When I'm talking about the performances, I'm talking about things from last week. Doug, you want to start with Botch?
Botch, yes, I will start with Botch. So both these matches that, were a big topic last week have already happened now. But, it's not the matches I want to talk about. It's the buzz around the matches. Specifically, I'm talking about Jinder Mahal's shot and Hook's shot that they got for their, respective brands, world titles. Tony Khan, Man, somebody needs to take Tony's Twitter away from him. He doesn't need to play this smart mark nonsense. I mean, these are tweets like I would be making about, these are these tribal tweets that AEW is better. What is Jinder Mahal? Stop it, dude. Stop. This is a botch for me. Tony tweeting like this and being ridiculous and looking just like some like chat room fool. You're a son of a billionaire that runs a major wrestling company. See, I got another thumbs up there from it.
At least it's happening in appropriate moments.
Exactly.
We're
not talking about like wrestlers, dying or anything, but that's a botch for me, man. I mean, I really, really do. There it is again. I really do love AEW. I try and stay away from the tribalism. I maybe get a little red when we talk about Cody leaving and all that, but for the most part, I love wrestling all across. But Tony, it was a botch, man. Come on, you can do better.
I'm going to AEW for my botch too, Doug. And again, not trying to pile on here, but definitely there's some things to be buttoned up in that company with Tony at the center of it. Anna Jay, she makes a great heel, in my opinion. She also makes a great face. I like her as a face. However, turning her back to face by simply teaming her with a couple of fan favorite wrestlers on a show that they decided they were going to acknowledge Brody Lee. And that is how you turn her back to, I mean, it wasn't a one-time thing. Apparently she's babyface now because of the one show where the guy who died in real life, you were in his faction. So let's put you in with the face women and now you're face too. That's just random and kind of bad booking, and I didn't care for the way they decided to do that. Do it, but tell an organic story. Don't just do that.
Well, when was Anna Jay on TV last, though? I'm trying to think. She's been. Did she go off with Jack Perry when he got suspended? I mean, what happened there?
now she's on all the time. Now that she's face. Now that they turned her face in that really odd fashion, in my opinion.
Yeah.
How about your performance?
So I don't know this dude's performance or performer. We're talking we're talking performer, right? Or match?
Yeah, performance.
Performance. Okay, so I've looked for this dude's name everywhere. I cannot find it, but I'll call out the match. So this Austin Theory Carmelo Hayes match that was on SmackDown. I have got to give a shout out and call this ref, who all I've seen is him referred to as the referee, who stopped this thing, who had the good sense to stop this thing when that Spanish fly just looked nasty. The avalanche Spanish fly just looked nasty. I thought somebody snapped their neck, landed on their face. Even Grayson Waller outside the ring, he has this terrified look on his face when he sees them land. The slow-mo is just insane when you see this in slow motion, but that ref is on it. I mean, that is a excellent ref. Thankfully, these folks, both these guys have like contusions to their face or whatever, but no apparent real damage, no stingers, nothing like that. But it looks like it could have been so bad, and that ref was on it and just stopped it. Said, "Nope, we're done. We're done." Again, that's something that Tony Khan's guys could probably take note on. When somebody has an obvious concussion, you stop it. When somebody looks like they might have just done something, you stop it. You make sure your guys are okay. But kudos to this ref. Do not know his name.
They had big plans for that match, but
sure,
it was the absolute right thing to do, because you're right. Both men could have had two broken necks out of the same situation. It looked awful, looked scary, and it was a very good call on his part to just like no. And how smooth did they go to the announcers, and the announcers moved on with things.
Right,
you're right.
Professionals.
And AEW, they would have gone on for a little too long there, and instead WWE got the camera off the guys so that the medical crews could pay attention, and they went on with the show. Good call. For me, mine's more kayfabe, but I'm giving my performer and performance of the week to Oba Femi. Oba Femi came out of nowhere. He won this is going to be one of those exhibits Doug will use and why you need to be watching NXT.
Okay.
He won the NXT breakout tournament. And then the very next week after winning the breakout tournament, he cashed in the contract he won as a result of that tournament and beat SmackDown's Dragon Lee.
Okay.
for the North American Championship. Now, Dragon Lee did just successfully defend his title before that, but that's how cash-ins work, right? You get a guy when he's vulnerable, and Oba's your new North American champion. That's how
this dude, right? He has a good look. Yeah. I like that. I like that look.
He's the first, what are the NIL, if that's the category of college athletes that can earn a living now, right? Is that what I'm bad with the acronyms, but
you're asking me about sports ball.
The rule changes that allow college athletes to earn money. He's one of those, and he's the first one that I think that they're using in this way to hotshot someone from a prospect into the conversation. It's going to be obviously up to him as to whether or not he has the charisma and the talent to stay there. But he certainly has the buzz now, and that's how you do it. Like,
and he definitely has the look.
This guy does what?
Okay, yeah. And you check out Dragon Lee for this. Wow,
you put him over a main roster talent. That's how you do it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. And this is NXT. Okay, we'll have to check that out.
Doug, let's talk match of last week.
So this is where I try and make sure that Papa Khan does send me my check this week. after me, running him down a bit. But let's talk about Collision this past Saturday, where we had a tag team match. Actually it was trios match. It wasn't a tag team match. It was trios match. We had, the not the Dark Order, the House of Black, and FTR and Daniel Garcia. And I'm just kind of confused on what's happening here. But by the end of the match, I was like, I want to see more of this. This was just great. Boom, 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 boom. Love the way this went down. It just built. It's the way you're supposed to book a wrestling match. You start out slow. You got that little bit of burn. You're telling a couple of different stories in there, and you just keep building on them and building on them, and then by the end, it's just like, boom, false finish, false finish, false finish. He's not kicking out of that. He kicked out of that. What's going on? Love that match. Great match. And it was the main event of Collision. Go see it if you haven't. I loved it.
Well, while you're there, just go ahead and watch all of Collision, because my match of last week also is coming from Collision. Different match. We tear Tony down, but there's no denying that he also can still put on a great in-ring product with the talent on his roster. That was also apparent. And I mentioned her earlier, the virtuosa, Deonna Purrazzo and Red Velvet. That is how women's wrestling needs to be presented on AEW television. Doug and I have hammered, even in the good days, if you want to talk about the good old days of AEW, before we had such problems with hotshot booking or Tony's Twitter feed. But back in those days, we still complained that the women's division wasn't held up in the same way that to be equal with the men's, and was lagging behind what WWE was doing. I am encouraged. And this is the kind of matches that show me why I should be encouraged. And you got Deeb coming back too, maybe Britt Baker after that. Like, suddenly AEW's women's division is looking like the place to be. Purrazzo is a star. It's good to see her on my TV. Her and Red Velvet tore it down.
Yes, they did. I got no argument with the virtuosa. And that was, and until the main event, that was going to be, my match of the week. And then I was just like, man, especially the way that trios match just kind of started out, looked like a slow burn. For some reason, my old Mark brain didn't realize what was happening until I was in the middle of it going, oh, I get it. Yeah, we were in first gear there. We're just going through the whole show. I get it.
So don't go watch Collision is what we're saying.
Absolutely. What we're saying is go watch Collision, because, AEW has excellent talent. Their owner has excellent taste in wrestling.
And no one's really watching Collision. So
even if it gets a little wacky. Yeah. And people need to watch Collision. Yeah. Watch Collision before it ends up on YouTube.
That's right.
There we go.
With that, Doug, we have another one in on both Facebook and YouTube in the books, and our schedule, as you can see, we got some more Royal Rumble content coming your way just this Sunday. We will be previewing the Royal Rumble event for 2024, letting you know who we think might be your winners, as well as surprises and predicting winners and losers of all the other matches. And you'll see at the very end of all those subjects coming up, not only do we have our review after the event, but Doug, we're going to be fixing AEW in February. So definitely reasons to stay tuned to future editions of the Two Bros Wrestling Show. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Don't forget to subscribe, like, hit that bell for notifications. I'm not sure what you do on Facebook, but do that stuff too.
Until Sunday.
See ya. Go watch some wrestling, everybody.